Hey, good morning. Welcome back to Coffee Talk. It is Sunday, not too early, 6 in the morning on a Sunday, 10 June. I've got my coffee in the fruity cup this morning. Some kind of dark roast, not exactly sure what kind. Make sure you've got your coffee or your tea or your beer, I guess, if you're on a long night, now early morning. I suppose it's possible. For you youngsters, you young ones out there, I'm going to talk about several things today. Going to give you a quick Guido update on what I've been doing lately as far as World of Tanks. We'll talk about the missions and specials as we always do. Dig a little bit into the Aquino weekend. I hope I'm saying that right. Up in Canada. Kind of interesting. Talk about patch 1.02. Can you believe we're on the second patch from update 1.0 already? And that should come probably on the 12th. So in a couple days. If you're like me and you mess around with replays, make sure that you do whatever it is you need to do with them, because sometimes they don't work after the new patch. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Better safe than sorry. We're going to talk about a part of 1.02, which Wargaming is called Fixing the Comrades. Fixing the Comrades. That one's going to be fun. I've dug through that and I have some thoughts on that. And then we'll finish up with Frontline thoughts. Frontline just ended. I'm going to talk a little bit about Frontline, some of the things that happen in Frontline as far as gameplay goes, and what that may or may not mean for World of Tanks in the future. And then any other cats and dogs and things I come up with as we do our research today. So grab your coffee, sit back, whether it's Monday morning or Sunday morning, doesn't matter. Have a little drink of coffee with me and let's get started, and we'll talk a little bit about World of Tanks this morning. So what have I been doing this week? Almost entirely the prototype standard B, grinding probably about 30,000 experience away. Yeah, that's about right. It's 197, I want to say. I've got 164 up there. Fully upgraded, obviously, at this point. Started it from stock, and I'm going to tell you it's been a bit of a rough grind. Let's take a look at this real quick. I'll go through this when I do my review of the tank, which should happen in the next week and a half. I'm at 179 battles. I did grind this one from stock, so it's going to take a few more battles than usual. I'm at 929 average XP, which has finally been coming up. It's been low 800s for a long time, but only 50% win rate. So yeah, it's been a rough one for me. But that's actually been climbing pretty well lately, doing a lot better. Damage ratio is up. Destruction ratio is finally getting respectable at 2.11, but that is on the strength of quite a few Top Gun. I got the 9-kill Radley Walters. I had a 7-kill game. A couple other Top Guns, probably in the last dozen, maybe 20, I guess, not dozen. 20 or so games, so things have been looking up. 2,281 average damage. It was in the low 2,000s. I was in just barely over 2,000 for a long time, and that's really been climbing on the strength of those good games along there. But I'm starting to get the hang of the tank as we go. So that's pretty much what I've been doing. The other thing, I guess I played one game in the RAM 2. We'll talk about that in just a moment with the missions and why you might want to do that if you own it. But that is basically what I've been doing. Pretty much pure tier 9 auto-loading madness in the standard B, which I'm starting to like a lot more. Did not like very much while I was not doing well. Let's move on to the next thing. We're going to talk about the missions and specials. Missions and specials, man, there is not much going on, to be quite honest, in the missions and specials. The half-track thing for the BDR is still trucking along. As soon as I get a hold of my mouse right here. We have the IS-7 on track. That's a good on track. The IS-7 is a good tank. So nothing much events-wise for the missions. A couple ace tanker setups, as usual. And we get down here to the other missions, which is one of the things I wanted to talk about. We've got the Aquino weekend, the get your T-54 first prototype out and get your Ram 2 out. Man, what to say about that? This mission right here, first of all, the rewards are pretty cool. You get these credit boosters, plus 25% for that. You get 2 for for that, and you get 2 for that. Well, interestingly, the one that's good for any tank, oh, by the way, you can only do these each once. The one that's good for any tank or any tech tree tank only gives you 1 credit booster. And the ×2 crew for that game. Top 10 experience doesn't say you have. Oh, you do have to win. Never mind. The win is on there, so you do have to win. All right, fair enough. But it's a one-off. You can do it once. Well, for the 2 premium tanks, what do you get? Well, you get 2 credit boosters, and you get ×3 for your crew. So you've got 3 kind of special missions this weekend. 2 of them are for premium tanks. I mean, what does that say, really? I don't think I have to say what that says. That's pretty poor. It's pretty poor, and it puts their marketing strategy in a bad light, which is pretty much seems to be their goal lately. I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around why you would do it that way. Why it wouldn't be a little bit more involved for the tech tree tanks. This is just a one-off. It's supposedly a Oshawa Aquino weekend, right? That's their special. They appear to be trying to promote it. There's a video on the page. They talk about it. They're saying, hey, see, we're going to go to this thing. Come out and see us, all that kind of thing. And for the tech tree tanks, there is only 1 mission. But hey, if you want to go buy, or you already own premiums, but I think this is more about, hey, go buy these premiums, we're going to give you 2 special missions that are only for the premium. This kind of thing snuck in the last year and a half or so, and it's starting to accelerate. And we'll talk about it when we get over to the stuff that's for sale. But we've been watching this, the royal we have been watching this for the last year, and it really is starting to become the standard and not a kind of one-off or side gig that's going on. Let's move on to the specials. Here's the things that are on sale. This continues to be just massive amounts of tanks on sale at any one time. I thought it was odd when it started, but it seems to be the standard at this point. Still got the Warhammer things. The Sturv is the tier 8 of the week. That's something new, at least I haven't noticed it. So that's actually a pretty good TD if you like hiding in bushes and doing the casemate TD thing. Makes a lot of money, doesn't need really much gold, so you don't have to spend a lot of credits shooting gold. You make a lot of credits with it. The STG Guard and STG, which is the same tank, one with the Guard paint job. Here's the one without the paint job, which you can put whatever camouflage you want on it. Essentially the same tank. Are both on sale with the standard massive kind of war chest all the way down to just buying the tank. Here's the Ram 2, the Aquino weekend. I'm assuming there's a Ram 2 at Aquino, or maybe that's just because it's a Canadian kind of thing. Unsure why it's the Ram 2, but maybe both of those. I looked at the video, I didn't see any Ram 2s running around in the video, but maybe there's one in the museum there. War chest all the way down to the tank itself. The T14, the Rudy is still out there, pretty good. The 3485M is better, as I've mentioned before. Sentinel is out there, T1E6. So you can just see there's all kinds of premium tanks on sale right there. As far as any of those I would necessarily buy if I was still buying tanks, maybe the Sturv. Guard seems interesting, but remember it's not a premium matchmaker tank. It does have a 122 and it's got the better pen. I want to say it's 212 base, which is decent. Still going to struggle a bit, obviously, like all tier 8s do against tier 10s. I don't know if I'd recommend it, but since I don't own it and haven't played it, I'll just leave that one out there. The Ram 2, I actually played. I'm going to have a video coming out of it. I went down to just get that mission done that I just discussed a second ago, both with that and the T54 Mod 1, and on both those games had really good games. The Ram 2 is a pretty fantastic little tier 5 premium, but it requires a lot of gold spam if you want to be very effective. Has a very low alpha gun with okay pen, but you put gold in it and the speed at which it shoots, it just shreds things, provided you can avoid getting hit. And sometimes you actually get some pretty funny bounces off of the armor. It's not bad for a tier 5 medium. So not bad overall. That's basically what we got for sale. Let's move on to the next. So here's the Aquino Tank Weekend advert on the page right here. We've also got special missions for the Ram 2, T54, and all vehicles tier 4 and higher, which if you just read that, you would assume that there's some kind of great mission set coming up for a Kino Tank weekend, but no, it turns out to be just one for each coming in there. There's also a video, which this was weird. This is a advert for ×3, the Kino Tank weekend, but there's no video here. In fact, if you click here, then finally it takes you over to the video itself, and we'll show you all kinds of what's going on, things exploding, tanks driving around, all that good stuff. And there's a contest, which I didn't realize until I started researching it, that they're going to take 8 people from the contest, and if you can get there, obviously you can do some hands-on experience inside an actual tank. So that's all kind of cool stuff right there. It's kind of an odd way for them to do it, but that is pretty much par for the course with those guys. Enough on a Kino Tank weekend. Let's go over to the patch 1.0.2 stuff. Let's just take a quick look at what they got coming. I'm going to break it down further when we start talking about the fixing the comrades part, which is the funny bit. But the tier 10 Soviet tanks are coming in. The K91, remember there's 2 missing. The one that follows the 430 version 2 and the one that follows the T10. At tier 10, we're missing 2 tier 10 tanks to make complete lines, or complete half lines if you want to look at it that way, because some of them split off. The things to know here are that the K91, the medium turret, or the rear turret medium tank, is 252,700 experience. If you've been grinding the version 2, that's what you need to have, or more, if you're just going to simply unlock the new tank. We're going to talk about what they think this tank does in just a minute, because it's pretty humorous. The heavy tank 277 is 220,800 experience, so same things I just talked about. Other things they're doing, this was great right here. 1.0 breathed new life into 29 maps, fixing this, that, and the other, yada yada. Where is it? Although the majority of changes worked out, we've heard loud and clear many players weren't enjoying the last round of tweaks to Fjords and Erlenberg. You think? That's pretty funny, man. Now, this is important because this company has been very loath to change maps, and usually map changes and fixes take a very, very long time. This is really interesting to me that it happened that fast. So that means people yelled loud enough and it was bad enough that they actually noticed. Now, if a map problem is bad enough that they actually noticed, reference the 268 V4, which we'll get into in just a minute, being nerfed fairly quickly, not real quick, but fairly quickly. That's an interesting development coming from Wargaming. But it speaks to 2 things. It speaks to, one, making huge mistakes that swung something way too far one way, which should never have happened to begin with. But the fact that they're actually hearing about it and doing something a little faster. So I don't know where the balance is there. Do we cheer that they're fixing something faster, or do we look at it and go, well, they're fixing it faster because they really blew it so hard? So I mean, if we're looking for them to fix things faster, but we're counting on them to blow it a lot worse beforehand in order to get there, I don't know if that's the right answer. I don't know if that's the right answer. They also made changes to Malinovka and Mountain Pass. Mountain Pass, that'll be interesting. I'm not really sure how it's going to go. I wish they wouldn't touch Malinovka. I have no idea. I have no idea whatsoever. If you do, please put it down in the comments. What is wrong with Malinovka exactly that needs to be fixed? What are the complaints about? I don't know any complaints about Malinovka. It used to be called Kampanovka. You know, people didn't like it because it was an open map, but really it's one of the best maps, most balanced maps out there. I mean, I don't mind being on either side. I do not really understand what's wrong with it, but we'll find out when they try to fix it, because they'll probably create a new problem for it. All right, Klondike. I've heard about this multiple times, and I'm not sure if this is a regular map or if it's supposed to be a grand battle map. I didn't look into it too deeply, but another snow map, I guess. So, Son of Glacier. Hopefully it's better than Glacier. I don't know. We'll see. Speaking of maps you should have fixed, how come you're not fixing Glacier? I don't see it up there. What I'd rather see there just as we're starting to riff and go off into random directions on revisiting maps, I'd like to see some of the maps you took out put back in, fellas. So maybe there's some more maps. In addition to beautiful landscapes, you also get a rousing music score. You know, let's talk about this for a minute. I suppose there are people who dig the music, and I do see that in chat. People say, oh, the music on this map is cool, or where's this song from, or something like that. And I have to assume those are people who've heard it for the first time, because I turn the music off, man. I don't get the fascination with the music. I suppose if you're building a big game like that, it is a complete media kind of thing. So yes, the music should be addressed if you're going to have music. I don't know why you have music. I'm struggling here, fellas. I don't get the fascination with the music. I think a lot of people listen to their own music, or they just turn the music off. I would pretty much almost guarantee the vast majority of competitive or good players have it off to reduce distraction. But hey, you know, maybe you're a better player than me and you'll turn it up to blasting and you love the game music. But after about the 10th time in the same map, wouldn't that become kind of repetitive? So it becomes one of those fluff things that, yes, you got to have, but obsessing about it and spending a lot of time on it, who gives a rat's rear end? Maybe I'm completely off base here. Let me know if you love the music. I would be interested, because I don't get it. I don't get it. They're going to work on some customization. They're going to let you put paints and styles on Tier 4 tanks and the Tier 8 vehicles. The former will be introduced to Contest 2. Initially, these are only available for... So it's weird how they're kind of adding the customization things. It's going to be hard to know which tanks... I guess there's some things they have to do to make sure they're all done, so they're doing it in bits and pieces, and that's fair enough. Make it look good, make it work. They're changing the onboarding, not changing, but improving the onboarding thing. The boot camp thing is going to have some more missions. You know, there's a kind of boot camp where you get some awards. That's going to change a little bit. It'll be interesting to see if experienced players like us are able to do it and get the rewards. They're actually pretty good for the first one. Now, I recommend doing that if you haven't done it. Go back into the boot camp and do all the basic missions to start and get all the goodies right there. You can actually join common tests and help them test their own game. I'm of two minds on that. I don't like wasting my time on the test. At the same time, I'm not helping put any input in there. Not that my input's, you know, the end-all be-all. Because one of the things I'm going to discuss in just a minute is that they come out of the test thinking they've done a lot of balance testing. And they say, well, you know, we looked at it at a common test and it's all balanced. But the fact is that a test server is terrible for checking balance. It's awful because people don't play like they do on the public server, and that's possibly where we've run into problems with some of these OP tanks that have come out, just because you play differently on the test server for lots of reasons that I'm not going to get into. Maybe that's a whole other subject at some point. Maybe I need to go play it a bunch and see if I can figure out what it is. But I find that in gaming, test servers are not very good for balance. They're good for checking for bugs, for things actually working, you know, looking for clipping or pieces of terrain that are broken, things like that. They're good for that. Making sure the gun fires and the, you know, all the little things on the turret turns, that kind of crap. But as far as an actual game balance under realistic gameplay situations, it's not very good. It's not very good. All right, let's move on to the next. We're going to spend most of our time digging into this article right here that they call Fixing the Comrades. 3 Soviet tanks get adjusted. 3 Soviet tanks get adjusted. Well, actually it's 4. Good math, guys. It's the object, the K91, the 268 version 4, and the version 2, 430 version 2. So your math's off already. We're going to have other math problems in this as well, but... So right off the bat, I don't know what they're talking about. I know what they're talking about, but, you know, good job with the attention to detail, fellas. Object 277. Right off the bat, we get this. After being thoroughly assessed during our common tests. Thoroughly assessed. Yeah, right. These machines are getting their share of adjustments. Alongside these newcomers, the 268 version 2 has been tweaked to better fit the overall gameplay. God, I should hope so, because it don't fit right now. It doesn't need to fit. It just takes a great big hammer and bashes everything into the ground and makes it fit as a big smudge mark on the ground. Right. All right, so the 277, which is the heavy, the follow-on to the T10. Mobility. The 277 is considerably faster than other heavies. Oh, fantastic. It stands somewhere near the IS-7 in terms of top speed and even beats the old fellow in acceleration. Capable of keeping up with its medium teammates, the tank plays an important role in supporting early rushes to strategic points on the battlefield. Oh, fantastic. So let's match it up with some 268 V4s. Because what we need is a really fast heavy that can run with the mediums or maybe even beat the mediums to the medium spots. That's what the game needs, right? That's exactly, yeah. Because you didn't learn anything from the 268 V4. I don't think they play their game. Not really. And more important than that, not playing the game, is they have a vision for what they think the game should do. And I think this was Murazor's and the old balance teams, which is probably some of the same people. But the old plan was to force this kind of idea of how they think their game should play without really considering how it does play or really playing at that level. Or if they do play at that level, they just don't like the way it's played, so they want to try to jam everyone down into whatever it is their idea of how the game should play is. So let's dig into this a little bit more. So, where does it say? Capable of keeping up, plays an important role in supporting early rushes. Decent maneuverability allows you to remain effective in one-on-one encounters against rival mediums. All right, well, is it a heavy or a medium? Firepower. Gives you everything you're used to. Accuracy, high armor pen, and good firing. The alpha is lower compared to its Soviet classmates, which sets your playstyle away from dropping bombs towards frequent damage dealing. With that in mind, try to avoid hills. It's only got a minus 5.5. 5.5 is an odd number. Usually, I don't know if I've seen any tanks with a point on their depression, or is it always rounded? That I don't know. That was odd to me. I don't know if I've ever noticed other than a solid, minus 5, minus 6, minus 8. So it doesn't have really good gun depression, but it's got quite a good turret. Really, it's kind of a hover medium on steroids. I have a couple of people who have sent me replays on this thing from the common test. It is getting a little bit of a nerf here and there, so we'll see what happens when it gets onto our test, but it is as fast, if not faster than mediums, carrying a heavy gun. Not the huge one necessarily, but still better alpha than most of the, if not all of the mediums, and a pretty good DPM overall as well. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? The armor, it's got a well-armored turret, which is pretty good. I want to say it's 250 or something like that, and it's the standard rounded Soviet turret. So as a hold-down fighter, it's going to do well, much like the hover mediums do when they can find a hold-down spot to cover up their holes. View range. This one killed me. And when I looked at it, I went, wait a minute. And I went and looked at some of the tier 10 scouts. And so 400 meter view range on a heavy. Do you know that the T100 LT has a 390 base? Just think about that for a minute. The tier 10 Soviet scout has 10 less meter view range than this ridiculous thing. Now that's not really a problem endemic to this tank. It's a problem across the board for heavies and mediums at tier 10. Being able to outsee or at least be on parity with scouts. And they just keep doing ridiculous stuff like that. So this is just a big medium. Now the T10 is basically that kind of idea. And it's not overpowered. I don't think anyone would say the T10 is overpowered. So let's see what happens with this. But as I look at least the words of what they say, right? These don't have a lot of numbers here. Not a lot of numbers involved. It's just the words from Wargaming on what they think this tank's going to do. It sounds like they haven't learned a whole bunch from the 268 V4 fiasco. And we'll get to that in a minute looking at the 268 V4. But what they should have learned is fast, capable tanks being able to get to critical points can really unbalance their game quickly. Can really unbalance their game quickly. We have a lot of tanks that can do that, lots of mediums, scouts, things like that. But now we're talking about getting heavies, and we already have this ridiculous TD that can do that kind of function. And that's how your cascading Raffle Stomps Avalanche games happen, because an advantage is gained so quickly that the other team is going to have a really hard time recovering from it. Let's keep going on, but this is kind of a theme with these guys, not really understanding what's going on. All right. 277 is an excellent addition to any team. I would assume so. It can assist in taking key points on a map like Malinois Hill, as well as support its heavily armored allies who lead the charge, hiding behind their silhouettes. What you don't want to do is play as a breakthrough tank due to weaker hull armor. All right, so more evidence that they don't really... Every time I see them say breakthrough tank, I wonder what planet we're both living on. The idea of a breakthrough tank doesn't really exist in World of Tanks. It's not exactly a thing. Any tank can be a breakthrough tank depending on the map and the area you are. A breakthrough is a local tactic, not so much a tank. Now you could say the Mals or the Malshin or one of these big, an E100, they're like a true breakthrough tank. I can really force my way through things. But my point is that's a yes and no, more no than yes, the way World of Tanks is played. An E100 can't simply go to one of the funnels and just push through and bull his way through and break through. He's going to get shredded. You're going to have TD sitting in the back. Artillery is going to knock the living snot out of him, keep him stunned. He's not going to be able to do anything. He's going to be tracked by the mediums. He's going to be pinned by gold. He's going to get swarmed and killed. So there's no real... That's not a gameplay thing. You try to gain a localized advantage in numbers and firepower, and then you try to break that flank or win that flank. But it's not because of any one tank that you have necessarily. It's because you have created a localized overmatch. That breakthrough tank may be an important part of that particular tactic or situation on the flank, but it's not like we go, oh, we're bringing an E100 up, we're breaking through, baby. That's not really a thing, all right? The other part of that is that a T10 and a 277 absolutely can help in a breakthrough on a flank because they get there first. They get there first, they grab the spot, they get the good spot, and they're able to deal damage early. And early damage is what creates breakthroughs on this game. Early damage overmatches, cascading effects. When you have fast tanks with good firepower and decent armor who can get there, that's what's effective. That's why the 268 is, such a breakthrough tank. It's got such capability. If it was extremely slow, like a T95, you wouldn't call it a breakthrough tank, because a T95 takes forever to get there, and it can't maneuver very well, and it can't. What's the word I'm looking for? It cannot move from the breakthrough to the next thing. It can't take advantage of the overmatch that it makes by its presence as fast as these faster tanks can. Fast, capable guns, accuracy, decent to good armor, that's what makes a breakthrough tank. Not big lumbering Type 5s, Type 4s, to some extent E100s. So I find that verbiage on their part to be very interesting, and it makes me, when they say stuff like that, it makes me wonder what game they're playing. Are they writing that because of what they want their game to be, what they're trying to force their game to be, or are they actually paying attention to how the game is played and what the stats of these various tanks and capabilities of these various tanks that they're putting out actually do in the game, on a pub server? All right. The Object 277 performed well during the common test. That oh my God, that one's got me. Now I'm worried because I would assume that if it was overpowered, it would perform well. All right, I'm not calling it overpowered. I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see what it does in pubs. With the 268 version 4, I think everyone knew right off the bat. Just looking at its numbers, that thing was going to be ridiculous. Looking at this one's numbers, okay, maybe not so bad. But I do think it's going to be the best medium in the game. Should be the best medium in the game. All right. Whew. This is great. We got loads of player feedback on the tank's vulnerability. Oh, here we go. This is one of my favorite parts right here. This absolutely cracked me up. All right. However, we got loads of player feedback on the tank's vulnerability to critical hits to its fuel tanks, a trait that didn't fit to the whole minion line. Oh, darn. Your Soviet tanks were lighting on fire? You can't have that. That's ridiculous. Why did it happen? Well, let's find out. We initially placed the modules in strict accordance with the vehicle's historical notes and blueprints. Because of this, its fuel tanks were so big they covered the ammo rack and would get hit by an enemy shell piercing through the upper armor plate. This led to 277 behaving differently from what players had become used to at lower tiers. Translation. Our Soviet tank was lighting on fire too much, so we had to fix that. Usually we like historical accuracy, but screw that. We don't want to light on fire in our Soviet tanks. So every time they talk about historical accuracy being a reason that they can't do something to adjust or modify or balance a tank, just reference why did it happen on the on the fixing the comrades page. To fix it, we've reduced the size of the fuel tanks, which helped uncover the ammo rack so that the chance of catching fire versus beheading are now similar to those of the IS-3 and T-10. Beheading, that must be their term for a ammo rack with the turret popping off. I loved that. That was one of my favorite 2 paragraphs I've read, and I have a lot of favorite paragraphs that I've read on their page, but that was fantastic. All right, let's talk about the K91. This is the follow-on to the 430 version 2. Rear turreted, as you can see. There's some good stuff going on here too. So, the best DPM rate among all Tier 10 mediums says it all. Well, I guess it does, doesn't it? You can't release an OP tank unless it has OP characteristics. Dang it, we're giving it the best DPM. On top of that, the K91 has good armor penetration. Oh, great, thanks. Giving you more confidence of its rapid-firing gun. Now it's up to your timing and sense of rhythm. How much timing and sense of rhythm do you need when you've got the best DPM in the game? All right. This is where it gets good, fellas. So, if the 277 is the best medium in the game, what they're trying to do here, I guess, is make the best TD in the game. Another record among medium tanks. Train camouflage for your crew, and you'll get a steel ninja that can deal significant damage to enemies before getting noticed. Fantastic, guys. Fantastic. I mean, we just don't have enough TD sitting in bushes at the back of the map in the assassin lines you've made. So, I mean, really, that's what we needed. We needed more guys camping at the back of the map. Hopefully, there's a giant magnet on the back that does not let this tank get more than about 100 meters from cap. So, hopefully, you know, as test iterations go on, you can add that. That way, these guys can stay at cap, protect Artie and the cap. That's what we need. One of the main downsides of durability, the tank's armor will force you to avoid open encounters. Well, I guess if you're in a bush, you don't have to worry about the armor. Mobility, not very fast. The 430 version 2 is not super fast itself, but it's going to be fast enough to get where it needs to go, is what they're saying. Gun depression, this was pretty funny. Obviously, the gun depression is pretty bad, much like the 430 version 2, but you can't have that completely, and we'll talk about that in a minute. All right. How they think you should play it. The most important of your objectives is to stay away from opponents. That's the most important objective of many players. Even if closing in looks very tempting. Head-to-head fights may always happen, and this is where you need to rely on your crazy DPM. You'll just have more chances to beat down your opponent. Bushes and fallen trees will be your best friends throughout every battle. Man, wargaming, please, for the love of whatever, stop encouraging people to camp in bushes. So this is where new players get these ideas. All right, let's go off on another Guido tangent. This is the kind of thing where new players get the idea that in this game, certain tanks have certain roles, and this tank hides in bushes. That's what it does. And no matter what map they're on, no matter what the situation, no matter what phase of the battle, I hide in a bush because wargaming told me that this tank is a ninja assassin from a bush. No sense looking at the map, what's going on, playing according to the situation. I have a steel ninja sniper bush camper tank. I'm not supposed to get in together with other tanks and take them on. Rant over. So here's some of the numbers on it. Supposedly it's got bad armor, except it's got 140 millimeters, which is pretty damn good. As a matter of fact, we're going to take a look at it in a minute. It's best in class, although the angle is not as much, so that must be what they're relying on. The turret's at 220, not bad. So I don't know what they're talking about on the armor. The armor is good to better than some of the tanks around it. Right. The K91 is our attempt to design the ultimate DPM medium tank. Well, I thought you'd already done that. We already have the 907, we got the T62 and the 140, the T22, but it's been nerfed. How many ultimate DPM medium tanks with big, strong turrets and good camo do we need? Apparently one more. A machine with a low silhouette, great visibility values, sharpshooting gun, and but there's nothing cardboard about the armor. I don't know what they're talking about on that, other than the angles. That's driving me crazy. To add more of a medium tank feel rather than a TD. Is this a little bit of self-awareness coming in? I don't know. And provide more flexibility on various terrain types. The turret rotation angle will increase from 180 to 220. The 430 version 2 is really painful when you get into a maneuvering fight. If you can't keep them right in front of you at about a 60-degree angle, even though the gun will come off 90 degrees right or left for a total of 180, if they ever get kind of past your 60-degree line, it can be very difficult because you'll end up turning your hull and your turret at the same time, and it's easy for them to sneak around behind you to where you can't take them on. So that is a problem when you're fighting with the 430 version 2, but it's part of the uniqueness of the tank, and it's, I thought in the past anyway, it was one of the drawbacks in the tank to allow for the stronger armor and good turret. Apparently that's not the thing anymore, and now it needs to be more like a TD, even though we just said we don't want to feel like a TD. So they've seen this problem with their tier 10, and my God, you can't have that. We cannot have that. So now it actually goes out to 220 degrees. So there's an extra 20 degrees on each side. So about, 110 degrees off, right or left, so that it's not quite as painful in a maneuvering fight. Apparently that makes it more of a medium tank than a TD. that one little change. Even though everything you've described is a TD before this. On the sides, interestingly, you're going to get -9 depression, which is going to be a little wonky. It's -5 on the front, but if you can get sideways in your bush, then you're going to get -9, and that's going to make this thing pretty effective on some of the weird angles where you're kind of, that's the hills that are kind of sideways that have the undulations, and you can poke your turret over. It's going to be weird to use though because it's a kind of a side look. The problem I find with that in a lot of cases, and with the 430 version 2, is if you're trying to pop up over something and get that turret looking that way and shoot, oftentimes your front sprocket in the front of your tank is exposed, and they'll hit you right there and track you. So you have to give it more of an angle and kind of come at them, but then that's even a little more painful. It's weird to use these rear turreted, especially medium kind of tanks. Oh man. Anyway, at the end of it, we get into this whole thing. With these changes implemented, we'll get a consistent medium tank mini line with its own character and play style. They're obsessed with that. it's not something anyone gives a crap about other than them. I really don't think anyone gives a dang about that. I mean, the rear turreted stuff is interesting and okay. Put a rear turreted tank on the line, fine. But this constantly carping about it needs to have its own play style and they all need to play the same. I don't know, man. I don't see it. Don't care. And we've got the numbers here as things have changed. Let's see. Oh, actually, never mind. I'm getting a little ahead of myself because now we're talking about the 430 version 2, and this is the discussion on what they're doing with that here. They actually show the numbers for this one down here, and you got to click through it. It's a weird setup actually because they talk about the two tanks there. They give some of the numbers on what's going on with them. There's the numbers on what's going on. And for this one, instead of having a bunch of verbiage and breaking it out the same way, they have this little click-through act going on here, which was strange, but there you go. All right, so they're changing some things on the gun. The gun's going to become much more accurate. The dispersion's less. It's going to reload faster. Its aiming time is going to be much better. 0.9 seconds, I mean a whole second off the aiming time. The gun was always kind of wonky on this tank. This tank was a weird one because it was kind of an assault medium that was a little hard to use. I mean, I really loved this tank. It had a lot of character and flavor. But they're going to kick the crap out of that and turn it into a TD because it has to be a consistent mini tank or a medium tank mini line with its own character. And the character apparently is hiding a bush. Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks for crapping on a cool tank and turning it into a TD. I don't All right. Anyway, let's move on here. So, I don't know what these numbers mean or where they even came from. I can't figure it out. I'll look at the comparison in a minute. I'll show it to you. I don't know if this is based on the angle we're looking at because 159 millimeter, minus 80, making it 159 meant it was 239. It wasn't 239. This one's 209. And we've lost 105, so it was 314? Is that because of the angle? What are you guys talking about? We'll look at it in a minute. These numbers are completely off. I don't understand. I have no idea what the hell they're talking about right here. All right, and that gets us to the last fantastic subject for this one. The Object 268 version 2. The Object 268 version 4's, I said version 2, I meant version 4, balance turned into an issue, you think? After the machine got on World of Tanks battlefields. That should clue you in that your common test balance is not the best way. Let me go off on another tangent. If I were wargaming and I was designing these things, I would send them out weaker, slightly weaker maybe, than I thought they should be. Not terrible, but slightly weaker, so that fixes would come as buffs instead of nerfs. Fixes would come as buffs instead of nerfs. Of course, the background reason of why we release OP tanks, that kind of thing wouldn't support that. And I won't get into that. I've touched on that multiple times, and I think we all know what we're talking about there. Back to this. The set of characteristics we had prepared for the model was meant to make it a great assault vehicle. Congratulations, you did make a great assault vehicle. But we went too far with emphasizing its strengths. Well, what were its strengths? Wargaming. We'll get into that. The frontal armor was too thick. The top speed was too high. The engine power was too much. So it had no... The strengths were everything, right? The strengths were everything. To fix the issue, we're rolling out 3 sets of adjustments that will harness this beast. So, even as they're nerfing it, they're praising it. Right? Oh, it's such a great beast. We're going to have to harness it. Yeah. No, it's a great game-breaking piece of crap that you let sit in the game for months. crapping all over the game. It's not a beast. It's a piece of crap. Well, it's a good piece of crap. I mean, it's a fantastic piece of crap. It's a very shiny, ass-kicking piece of crap. Okie doke. Let's break it down. What are they going to do? How are they going to tame the beast? What's Wargaming's big idea? How are we going to fix the balance that where Tier 10 is completely dominated by one stupid tank and all of our competitive gameplay is teams of pure 268 V4s and one arty. No, they're not all that, but some of them are. Depends on what your strat is. Still, this thing is obviously overpowered. It immediately became a completely and totally dominant in a lot of places. All right, what's wrong with it? Well, firstly, we want the machine to be involved more into close mid-range fight. What? Firstly, we want the machine to be involved more in close mid to mid-range. Where's it involved now? Is this the terror of sniping? That's all it does. We've increased the gun's dispersion by 33% while moving or turning, whereas aiming time has increased from 2 to 2.5. All right, fair enough. The gun was ridiculous. These things could drive around shooting and nailing things. So the disconnect here is obvious. That goes back to what we were talking about. They have this vision of what this tank should be. We want it to be a close-in assault tank. Okay, fair enough. I disagree with the idea that I'm designing a tank for a specific purpose on this game other than just trying to balance the tank overall. But that's a philosophy thing, and you made the game work, and I did not. So, okay, let's go with that. And you're telling me that you want it to be more of a close to mid-range fighter. I'm telling you that that's what it is. All right, that's why it's so overpowered. It is a close to mid-range fighter already. It's a complete bully. How does it do that? What are the stats that allows it to rage in and kick the face in of everything in sight, coming with a bunch of mediums and leading charges with heavy tanks behind it because they can't keep up? What are the stats that do that? Let's look at that. Well, 55 kilometers an hour for one. Faster than a lot of mediums, some mediums. As fast as makes no difference to most mediums at tier 10. It keeps up with the mediums. So they're going to knock it down to 50. Oh, for love of God. You think the difference between 55 and 50 is going to tame the beast? That's ridiculous. Patently ridiculous. The engine horsepower was 1,500. This is a type of engine that doesn't exist. I suppose it exists now as far as the size and weight and horsepower. It probably does. When this thing came out, there is no way they would have ever developed a 1,500 horsepower engine that fit in that thing. And 1,350 is just as ridiculous. 150 horsepower doesn't. I'd have knocked it to 1,000 just as a starting point. 55 to 50 is not a nerf. That's called a placebo. You are completely out to lunch. No idea what you're talking about. Reverse speed was ridiculous. I already covered it. It was so far above everything else. You know, they nerfed the crud out of the Hellcat primarily because its reverse speed was so good it could get away from stuff. This thing doesn't have any of the drawbacks the Hellcat had because of all the armor and yada yada. And they're going to nerf it only from 22 to 18. That's not enough. That is still not enough. You're still going to have a very hard time getting around this thing. Right now, a medium cannot circle this thing, has no prayer in hell of circling this thing, unless there's some kind of track situation or terrain or a building it can block the thing on or something like that. The difference between 22 and 18, as far as in reality on how this game's played and the rest of the mediums, is zero. There is no difference. It still is going to be able, with its reverse speed and its traverse speed, it's not going to be circleable by mediums. In addition to that, it's not just that, it's the fact that as it pushes in and swarms with the mediums, it can maneuver fast enough to put its gun on people. Which completely, I won't say deletes, but very much minimizes the fact that it doesn't have a turret. That's the bottom line on that, is it's not even close to enough. 15 reverse would have been a starting point, and I might have even gone lower. Take a look at your other Tier 10 massively armored TDs wargaming. Pay attention to what the reverse speed is, and I think you'll start to understand what this one should be. This is ridiculous. It's not even close. Finally, the most overstuffed specs. All right, so that's how right there, see those two paragraphs? That's how they have no freaking idea why this tank is so dominant. No, they should, and if they do, they're lying to you with this. All right, so if they do understand it, then they're either full of crap and they're lying, or they don't understand why this thing is overpowered. I'm going to break it down for your wargaming. It's overpowered because it can get to the fight first, carries a pretty good gun and a lot of armor, but it's mostly about positioning. Newsflash, wargaming. Your game is about positioning. All right? That's what it's about. It's not about what you tell us the roles of tanks are. It's about positioning. It's about responding to overmatches and being able to get to the next spot the fastest. That's at the core what this game is about. And this thing breaks it because it can get there so fast and be so effective when it's there. But the core problem is this one, not this one. Although this one does exacerbate the speed at which this thing moves. All right. They're going to drop hit points from 2100 to 2000. Okay, all right, fair enough. I wouldn't care if they left it at 2100, provided they cut its speed down harshly. The only really good nerf here that is probably going to be highly effective is the lower frontal plate going from 245 to 201. That is going to open it up to more mediums and whatnot if they can get into that little thin plate, being a little more effective if there's not a lot of angle. Now it's got a decent regular angle, but if it puts any kind of side angle on you, it can be very difficult to pin. But 201 is going to put it in the range of more, especially the tier 9 mediums and things. If you're shooting gold, you'll at least have a chance. There'll be a chance of getting through there, depending on the angle at which he's showing you coming in there. So that's probably one of the better nerfs. This one made me crack up. Math in public. They've taken 10 off of the commander's hatch. It'll make it 230, right? Well, why does that say 232? Attention to detail, folks. Attention to detail. Penetration alpha numbers remain unchanged, so that the object remains a decent damage dealer. With the applied changes to armor and HP pull, its vulnerability will eventually become a bigger factor in battle. That is true. You're going to nerf the hit points a little bit. You're going to slow it down a little bit. It's got a little bit less armor, so its vulnerability will eventually become a bigger factor. But that's not the problem. The eventually becoming a bigger factor is not the problem with this tank. The problem is it gets there so fast and is so effective that it creates an overmatch so early and so fast the other team can't recover. That's the problem, because it's a positioning game, fellas. It's a positioning game. So the nerfs aren't enough. And primarily, they're not enough because the speed is left relatively unchanged. This tank will fight exactly the same. Yes, there will be some more pins happening on its lower plate, but it will still be up in your face, punching you in the face constantly. Man. So I went off on several rants right there. But I love that article because there was just so much. There was so much in this one article about their failure to understand the design of their game and how it's actually played. I said design of the game. I mean, obviously they understand the design of the game. They made the game. It's a great game. A lot of times they get a lot of stuff right. But there's this continual disconnect between how they tell us they want the game played and how the game is played, which I can't figure out. If it's hubris, if it's ignorance, if it's just, hey, we really don't want it to play like that. We really want it to play like this. There's a big grand vision. Or maybe on RU, they're right. Everything that they talk about here, that's how it happens on the RU server. I have a hard time. I don't know. The other thing is, and I'll fully admit, everyone watching this video, and myself included, we're all kind of the hardcore people who really pay attention to it. And since most people playing the game are kind of the casuals, doesn't matter. All this to them, this kind of stuff simply doesn't matter. And I, I'm fully willing to admit that that's probably a lot of it, actually. But it is interesting when you dig into it a little more and think about it a little more, how these things kind of all interrelate. The whole idea of what they think is happening or want to have happen and what really happens in the game. All right, that's enough of that mess. Let's move on. I just wanted to show you real quick the armor thing on the K90 or the 430 version 2. Let's take a look at that real quick. Okay, so remember the K91 on this front armor is 144 millimeters. And what I don't like about when they do this here is it doesn't talk about what the lower plate is, and I don't have that number. But right now, the 140 millimeter on the upper plate, you can see it's not as steeply angled, so that may have a lot to do with it right there. And then when we go down to the version 2, I don't know what's happening because they're telling me the upper plate's 159, but I'm going to show it to you in just a minute. It's actually showing as 120, I think. But they're saying, oh, we're going to decrease the armor on this thing so that it's a little weaker on the front. But I don't know what that's going to be because these numbers are completely out to lunch. Unless there's something I'm missing there. Fix me down below if that's true. But let's go ahead and cover that up. We'll come over here and look at the comparison. That's actually the 100 LT, by the way. Just wanted to show you that indeed it does have a 390 view range. And all these guys have 400s. All right. I'm going to get rid of the T100. Oops, messed it up. We'll go back to the compare. Get rid of the T100 LT. All right. So the Object 430 actually has a 120. Version 2 actually has 120 on the upper plate. So again, I don't know what the nerf's going to actually be. The 140 on the upper plate now for the Tier 10 for the K91. If you look at the rest of the whole armor tanks, the T62 is only 100. The Object's 100. E50's got a lot, but it's got less angle. So this may be largely an angle thing, but at 140, it's not paper. That's what it's advertised as. It's clearly not paper. The 121's pretty good. It's got 120. And the old 430 version 2 has 120. So a couple of those things don't really make sense as far as the armor goes. They're telling you that it's, it's a paper TD, but it's not really. It's actually pretty good. And the turret is as good as the rest of them. So I don't see how that tank is really supposed to be this paper tiger hiding in a bush. It's actually as effective as the rest of the hover mediums, to be quite honest, with the best DPM. So what could go wrong? I don't know. Nothing, I guess. Well, fellas, I am out of coffee, and that is all the raging I can do. That one got a little off the rails a couple times there. It's unreal, man. It's unreal. Sometimes what they say and what they're actually doing often don't match, and it becomes extremely frustrating as players when they say they're trying to do X, Y, or Z, but objectively and clearly by their actions they're doing A, B, and C. And you can just see that train coming, and how they don't see that train coming, you often wonder, but which then leads you to believe they saw the train coming and they're just talking out both sides of their mouth. So I don't really... Well, I say it all the time, how I don't understand it. I don't, but at the same time I do. Anyway, that is all I have this weekend. We gave you a quick update on what I'm doing. Still grinding that thing. Should be done pretty soon. I'll get you a review on that tank fairly soon. Hopefully I can remain above 50%, so I don't have to show you a 49 or 48% win rate on the tank. I've only one marked it, by the way. It's been a rough go. Talk about the missions and specials, a little bit about the Aquino weekend. Talk about patch 1.02. That is coming up, I believe, on the 12th, which is 2 days from now, Tuesday. At least that's the last I read. Fixing the comrades. Spent the most of the time fixing the comrades article. I wrote down LOL right here under fixing the comrades. That was fun. I did enjoy that one. And I gave you some other thoughts in there. I was going to talk about some frontline thoughts. I'll save that for next time. This is going long. It doesn't really apply. So, I'm trying to do my coffee talks. I'm trying to, formulate my coffee talk so that all of the things in the coffee talk are the same and they fight the same. So they're all, I don't know, that's reaching. All right. See you guys later. I'm going to go play a couple games.